So for those of you who don't know me, my name's Jackie Scanlon. I am the Development Services Manager for the Planning and Transportation Department for the City of Bloomington. And I am going to, tonight, I would like to walk you through the website and the resources that we have for this process, and go into the larger portions of what the proposal is planning to do. So of course, we want to thank you all for being here and giving your time to this process. This is the beginning of a long process, including two public hearing processes. If you are familiar with how a zoning code and zoning map works, you know that this will have to go through Plan Commission, which will take public comment and ultimately be decided upon by City Council, which will also take separate public comment. So the process we're doing here is we are trying to elicit feedback from the community on the proposal that we've put forth. So nothing is set in stone. This is not a guaranteed approved proposal. This is just an idea that we're putting out and asking you for your constructive, helpful comments on that. Basically, we know that this is controversial. There are a number of controversial things. It's very near to people's hearts, their homes and communities, and ours as well. We all live and work in this community too. And we wanted to put forth a proposal that we thought made sense. And then again, looking for constructive input and feedback to answer the question, where do we go from here? So how does this need to be changed? What can be improved, and what further information is needed to make the public processes that will come after work more smoothly and be more productive for the commissions that will see this. So I am going to share my screen and walk through the website. You can feel free to be chatting me during the presentation, but I won't be reading it. I'll be looking after, as I said before. So because of the volume that I assume will come in, I would suggest waiting, but it will all be in the record. So if you need to send a message, if you can't stay till the end, I understand. Okay, just a moment. Okay, so this process is the public outreach draft of the UDO zoning map. And we have created a landing webpage on the City of Bloomington website. And most of you are probably familiar with it. Many people have already visited the site, which we're pretty excited about. Public engagement right now is going to be difficult because of COVID. We can't just set up in chambers and have you come look at boards and write on little slips of paper your thoughts. So we are trying to engage on the website in as many ways as we can that are productive. Additionally, we've also reached out to all of council members and registered neighborhood associations and offered for staff to attend meetings to answer questions, as smaller groups sometimes are more conducive for conversation or more comfortable for people to get answers than coming to meetings like this. So here's the basic layout of the website, information at the top that we are trying to get out to you, and feedback at the bottom that we would like to get from you. So a general survey has been up. About 100 people have taken it so far, which is pretty good for less than a week. So thank you for doing that, those who have given input. That survey will be done at the end of this week, and another survey will come up related to tonight's meeting and the meeting on Thursday. And so this is where you will see that update, and all links for Zoom meetings will be here as well. So I am going to walk you through each of these resources. I'm going to first start with the interactive map, I believe. So when you click on the link for the interactive map, this is what you get. A disclaimer here, describing the purpose of the map and some items that you might see on it. And we have gotten some feedback about people having a hard time zooming in on different maps. And so I just wanted to show you here some options Let's see. You can type in your address in the top left, and it will zoom to the property of the address you've put in. If you click on the property, a new window will open up showing the address, your existing zoning as it is, and your proposed zoning district. So that is useful. If that is all that you are looking for, then you can find that here on the interactive map. It's you can zoom in and zoom out, and I think it's useful. This one is especially useful for when you're looking for your particular property. We also have a printable version. This is a PDF. This is the PDF link. We have gotten some feedback. I'm not sure if people are familiar, but you can zoom in and out of this as well. It's fairly high quality. So printing on an 8.5 by 11, if you needed that for some reason, would be easy, and this would be the ideal way to do that. Okay, I'm going to go into the story maps. So this is the first link here, the proposed zoning changes story map. We are trying to utilize these this way of getting the information out as more interactive, and also a way to get kind of a lot of information in a small place. So we appreciate everyone trying these out. And then this is what describes the basic map changes that have been proposed. So as I said before, this is the public outreach draft for the zoning map. We have been updating the Unified Development Ordinance and zoning map in a process that's been going on for some time to reflect the 2018 comprehensive plan. The Unified Development Ordinance Code update went into effect in April, and this is the beginning of the last process, which is the zoning map update and some text amendments to go along with that as well. And then the Unified Development Ordinance and zoning map update reflective of the 2018 comprehensive plan will be complete. It is in many ways a living document, so we will be going back to it. We take text amendments to council when appropriate. For example, we took the ADUs to council before the actual Unified Development Ordinance update because we were able to prepare that text amendment separately, and those types of things do happen over time before the next overhaul is done. So this just describes a little bit of that. And again, I can't stress enough that this process is not binding, and this process is with staff. So you're not having this conversation with Plan Commission or Council. We are looking for input to improve these proposals, and so that we can take a better product to Plan Commission in early 2021. And so that is what we are asking for from members of the public. So the zoning map draft was created using guidance again from the comprehensive plan, specific Bloomington community data, and then of course we have we have professional staff in the Bloomington Planning and Transportation Department, as well as consultation with other departments within the city. So we broke this down into 3 types of changes that are being proposed. So the first is locating new zoning districts. 3 new zoning districts are located on the map, and I will get more into those more detailed in a moment, but they're mixed use student housing and parks and open space and residential urban, which is R4. And the second type of change we're calling enhancement and adjustment rezones. That is about 20 areas in town that have been identified either through contact by the property owner, working with staff over time, identifying issues like split zones or a zoning that is clearly left over from a use that has been gone for some time, and where the surrounding area has changed and grown up around it that needs to be corrected. And additionally, some areas that, yes, seem left over or not appropriately zoned any longer. So that, again, is about 20 areas. We will be reaching out to those property owners particularly because they are not involved. Those properties are not involved in the new zoning districts or the plan unit development rezoning. So you would maybe be surprised to find that your kind of one-off property was being proposed to be rezoned. So we will be reaching out to those property owners this week. We've already heard from a couple who have gotten on the website and seen the proposed changes, which is great. So those are our second category. And the third type of change is rezoning plan unit developments. So for those who don't know, or even those who do, we have over 100 plan unit developments in town. A plan unit development is basically a zoning code, a separate zoning code for an area of land. So each one of these plan unit developments has basically its own zoning code and development standards that were agreed upon with the petitioner and council at some time in the past. So we have more recent ones. We've had ones that have come in recently. Project at 17th and Arlington went through recently. We have a project on the east side on P at Ellis and Longview, but we have PUDs that have been in place for decades, with some with development, some with none, some that are completely developed and do not have room for any new development. So the Unified Development Ordinance calls for those PUDs to be reviewed and rezoned to regular zoning districts. So that is what we are attempting to do with this mapping process. That should be done more often than it's been done in the past. So we will be doing that moving forward, but we will be catching up to those PUDs with this process. So again, this is an interactive map as well. Thank you. We got some feedback on the first night, the first day, that said, hey, do you think it would be more useful to have the legend here as opposed to there is also a legend over here on the side. So we added that. We are trying to respond in real time to questions about making these resources more useful. So thank you to that member of the public who raised that issue. So you can zoom in on this map, which I cannot because there we go, Zoom window is blocking it. But you can zoom in and move around on this map as well. It's maybe slightly less friendly than the interactive map because you don't put in the address, but you can leave this legend up if you know where you live and zoom to it and match the colors, of course. And then there's also this legend over here on the left. So another way to look at the zoning districts in the areas of land that you're interested in. Okay, so 3 new zoning districts they were created through the Unified Development Ordinance update, and now we are mapping them. So that was always the intent, was to find a location for these districts. The mixed-use student housing district this is the purpose statement from the Unified Development Ordinance and code reference there at the bottom. But basically the mixed-use student housing district is a location that is going to be largely devoted to student housing. This is something that's been discussed for a number of years in the community and was put forward during the mapping process, during the UDO update process, and was created and mapped. So in the comprehensive plan, student housing is ideally located away from downtown and in close proximity to the Indiana University campus. And one location that is identified is the North Gateway. So you can see on this map here, again, these are interactive, so you can zoom in. We have this sort of dark maroon color is the one we've chosen for mixed-use student housing, and you can see that this area here is the North Gateway, which makes sense even if you're not familiar with the comprehensive plan. And then we have identified 2 other areas that are immediately adjacent to Indiana University and potentially available at some time within the window of this Unified Development Ordinance for redevelopment. So the block here is just west of the Hyper. And then we have the commercial corner down here at 3rd and Jordan. So the mixed-use student housing doesn't allow only student housing. There are other uses allowed, supportive uses and uses that would not necessarily contain student housing. And those are listed here, as well as those that are conditional, along with the dimensional standards. So after tonight's meeting, we're going to have a series of meetings, the first one being on Thursday, and those will be dedicated to a particular topic. So tonight we're just kind of doing the large overview, taking some general questions if you have them, making sure that we are gathering that information that we can reflect back to you on the website. But then we will, for those of you who have more interest in particular topics, we will have specific meetings for these larger topics to be discussed. So Thursday night's meeting, which is 5:30 to 7, we will be discussing only mixed-use student housing. So it will likely be, depending on the size of participation, a lot of questions. What questions do you have? Do you have suggestions of where these should be located? Are there reasons that you do or don't like what's been proposed, concerns that you have, or things that you liked that you saw in the mapping proposal? So we will do that with each of the topics, and we will start on Thursday with mixed-use student housing. The second district that was mapped that is new is Parks and Open Space. And it's pretty, I would think, kind of non-controversial. We basically identified those areas owned by the Parks Board or Parks and Recreation City Department and zoned them for Parks and Open Space. They used to always be institutional, but this zone was created to make clear that the types of uses allowed in the park are prioritized in those locations. So the third district is residential urban, R4. And this was one that was controversial, of course, in the map update. Part of the reason it's controversial is because it comes along with more intense occupancy on the plexus. So we will get to that shortly as well. But what we have done is proposed R4 areas using math, using a mathematical model that we tried to locate the clusters based on property size. And I think Ryan Roebling is here and is going to explain that briefly, how that was done.
Sure. So the R4 parcels were identified from currently zoned R2 and R3 parcels that are less than the minimum lot area for R3, which is 5,000 square feet or 0.115 acres. So anything 4,999 square feet and below was captured and then identified. And then we located, tried to create a location for clusters. So a cluster was an area 100, we created a 100-foot buffer around the parcels that had been identified as R4 sized. And then, so a buffer is essentially a ring around that in 100 feet in every direction around that parcel. So if other R4 parcels were inside that buffer, they were identified as a cluster. So not just one, but multiple R4 sized parcels had to be inside these cluster or this buffer to be a cluster. And then so the reason we chose 100 feet is because the 50 feet is an R3 lot minimum lot width. So that would be 2 R3 lots. And then so if yeah, like I said, if an R4 sized parcel was within 100 feet of multiple other R4 sized parcels, it was considered a cluster. And then the zoning district lines were just drawn from there to the nearest right of way, generally a street, sometimes an alley, just depending on where that broke apart, just to create a continuous zoning district.
Great, thank you. You can see where they have been mapped here and how they, and I think it's helpful to hear a little bit how they're created because we have gotten some calls where someone says, I'm R4, you know, and then a block away, my neighbors are R3, why is that? So we want you to, we want to reiterate that that was done through a process of a way that we had to decide how to find them, where they should go. And we decided to do that using existing conditions on the ground. Additionally, that helps these lots be able to develop more easily. So for example, in some ways, so for example, you have to meet minimum lot size to have an ADU. They become eligible if they go to R4, if they don't meet the minimum lot size for R3. So that helps, is a small piece, a small key for us to help increase the viability or the options for that type of use. Again, this is a draft. So if you have constructive comments or thoughts about why it works in some places and not others, we would love to hear them. We've gotten some feedback about, you know, the way some of the boundaries are drawn, and we are definitely open to looking at those and seeing what makes sense to change. There will be changes made to this map, whether or not they're done by staff before it goes to Plan Commission, or a round is done at that point, or a round is done at council, or there are 3 rounds. It will happen, and your input is important. The input that has specific feedback is the most useful to us and to the decision makers. So thank you to Ryan for describing that. On this website, I mean, on this page, you can also zoom in to the different parts of town if that's easier than using the zoom over on the right. So permitted and conditional uses. And again, these properties would have a 4,000 square foot minimum lot size, be slightly smaller scale than the R3, which could up the opportunity for ADUs in some of these areas. So these are the enhancement and adjustment rezones I mentioned, otherwise known as EAR. We, again, will be contacting these property owners. You can use the website to page across to see what those are, and of course zoom in to see more detail about what they are. But basically, for the reasons I mentioned before, zoning is being proposed to be changed at those locations, unrelated to the big, the big 2 changes of the 3 zoning districts and the PUD update. So I went into this a little bit already, but the plan unit development update is a really big, heavy push, really big lift that we've been working on for a while. It's been discussed for a number of years as well, I think, and this seemed like the right time to do it. Many of you probably, and lots of people in town live and or work in PUDs that no longer need to be PUDs. They're already fully developed and can be rezoned to the most similar zoning district from the development code. So how does that help them? It just, it makes administration of their requests easier. When you call now, some of you probably know, depending on how old your plan unit development is, it may take a while to get an answer for you because it may only be available in your 1987 physical file that needs to be pulled. Additionally, it helps by having them go to straight zoning districts, then property owners and builders and people who are putting, helping put on back porches and small additions can go to the zoning code themselves and find out what the regulations are, creating less red tape for pretty simple processes that sometimes end up taking a while. So again, this is one of the slide maps. You can see, I think it's, you can correct me if I'm wrong, someone, but I'm pretty sure it's close to 25% of our land area right now is zoned PUD. That's a lot of PUDs, not just the number, but the area. So we will be proposing to rezone over 100 of them. There are some that we are not proposing to rezone because they are new enough that they are still under development, or still having portions being developed, or have such specific rules potentially that they don't have districts in the zoning code that can easily be applied. So again, this is a draft. These are the ones we've identified thus far. We're still in discussions about a couple of these older ones that are on the on this page still as PUD, and we are of course open to discussion with property owners if for some reason they think their PUD needs to remain a PUD for some, for some sort of development they have in the near future. Okay, so that's the first one. Just a moment. Okay, so this is the second story map located here, proposed housing diversity story map. I'm trying to click on it here. Okay, in residential districts. So the proposed changes are changes that are being proposed to the text of the Unified Development Ordinance related to uses of duplex, triplex, and fourplexes. They are in the code currently, and you can see this is the current way that they are expressed in the four primarily residential zoning districts. And a couple things. There's a housekeeping issue here where these asterisks that are included in these squares with no letters don't work. We've been advised by legal that these need to be changed, so we are doing that. That's happening either way. What we are proposing as the department and staff is what you see here, which is to allow duplexes as permitted in the four districts, triplexes as conditional in R2 and R3, permitted in R4, fourplexes as conditional in R3 and permitted in R4. And that is obviously a change from what is currently in the code, which you can see here. So again, you can visit this yourself as well. So we know that there are a lot of concerns about this. From the last time this was discussed, some of the things that we are looking to address are, one concern we've heard over again is that even if plexus are allowed in some of the subdivisions and newer areas on the east side of town, that their covenants restrict them. Some of you may remember from the last time that we did do a fairly extensive look at covenants, and that was not the case for, I would say, I think it was roughly half of them. But it was on a short timetable and we weren't able to dive into it as much as we wanted to. So this time around, because we're able to do this public outreach before, and before it's going to Plan Commission and Council, we hope to have a more robust answer for that, whether it be, yes, you're right, they can't do them, and we as the government don't enforce covenants anyway, but we do want to give full information to the decision makers, or more likely that idea has been overblown slightly, and that we would be willing to work with those neighborhood associations on which neighborhood associations that applies to and does not. Another item that we have heard about is people being concerned about their property values. We did last time as well, but we'll do slightly more in depth this time, look at existing plexes, which there are quite a few in town, as you know, in different areas of town, and the property values of their neighbors, and compare those to average property values in their areas. And what we found last time was that there was not a negative correlation, but we will be trying to find data like that to address some issues or find issues if there are issues, and see how we can change the regulations to address them. One that we have discussed or have heard as a concern is that people are concerned that they won't fit in with the surrounding neighborhood. Let's see here. These use specific standards are actually already in code, I believe, for duplexes. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. We'd be proposing to add them to both. So basically, they're architectural use specific standards. So even if the use was permitted, if the use is permitted or conditional in the zoning district, for example, a duplex, then in the 4 primary residential zoning districts, these standards would apply. And number 2 is the one related to architectural compatibility with the surroundings. So each duplex dwelling shall have similar in general shape, size, and design, shall be similar in general shape, size, and design to the majority of existing single family or duplex structures on the same block face on which it is located. So currently, in the Unified Development Ordinance, a single family home has to meet certain materials and, of course, height and bulk standards but not this. So a single family home could be built to the maximum height and impervious surface coverage in any sort of modern style or faux historic or whatever the property owner chose, and be in full compliance with the Unified Development Ordinance. We are proposing that duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes be held to a higher standard because one of the large concerns that we heard was physical compatibility with surroundings. So if a plex were to be proposed in that location where a single family home could be built maxed out, a plex actually has to be shape, size, and bulk and design in line with the majority of existing single family and duplex structures on the same block face on which it is located, including roof pitch, front porch width and depth, and building setback, as well as vehicle access. So those are all requirements that we don't hold single family to now and are not proposing to, but we are suggesting to add those to duplex to help address the concern that we heard last time about architectural compatibility. Additionally, we have, this is not here, but we will be proposing that were a new plex to be built, that a zoning commitment be recorded, indicating that the property owner is aware that each unit has to meet the definition of family, whatever that is for the zoning district. And so in these zoning districts, that would typically be 3 unrelated adults, and that they commit to doing that. So obviously that's already in the zoning code. We can do enforcement on anyone who isn't meeting that requirement, and we do regularly. If it comes up, we will address it. But in this way, doing it as a recorded zoning commitment ties that commitment to the chain of title for the property. So anyone else who were to purchase it would be immediately made aware of what those regulations are. And we have found that to be helpful in the past for other types of pre-enforcement issues. And we think that that could be very useful here. So I'm going to go back up here briefly and just put here the differences between permitted and conditional. So permitted, for example, the duplexes in every district would be a use that may be lawfully established in the particular zoning district listed, provided that it conforms to all of the applicable requirements, regulations, and standards. So again, the regular development standards for the district would apply. So the impervious surface coverage, we've heard some concern, oh, the duplexes would take up too much of the green space in my neighborhood. Well, they can't be any bigger than a single family house, so that shouldn't be an issue. Then the use specific standards that I've mentioned come into play with the asterisks here in the table, and those are added. Something we would maybe be looking for from the public or anyone who has ideas about other use specific standards that could address some of the concerns that you'll hear tonight or have heard in your discussions of these types of things with your neighborhood associations or just within your own homes. And then the second type of use is conditional use. So for a conditional use permit, you have to get a conditional use approval from the Board of Zoning Appeals. So that involves notifying all of your neighbors within 300 feet of your property. And not only do you have to meet the use specific standards that are already included for the use, but specific conditional use standards could be written for uses. For example, we are proposing them conditional triplexes in R2 and R3 and conditional fourplex in R3. More conditional use standards could be included for those uses beyond the typical 9 that are included for all conditional uses. So that is something that we are thinking about and would be interested possibly in feedback on. Are there things that could be included that that still allow plexus to be feasible, but that do address concerns of existing neighbors in the city? Okay. So we have a section here. If you saw the Plex conversation at Plan Commission last time, these will be familiar. We understand that it's controversial, and we are trying to reflect the values that these policies are working toward. We're trying to reflect the values of the city in the policies that we're putting forward. So yes, this did go to council previously, but it isn't the same council. There are 4 new members. It also isn't the same world we lived in the last time it went. Things are a lot worse for a lot of people. Our housing is not getting any better. Doing nothing is upholding the status quo, which is fine for some here in town and not so great for others. Plexes aren't going to solve all of our problems, and we have never purported for that to be true. We just think that they could be a good tool in a set of tools to offer options for people to be able to live out some of the values that the comprehensive plan hopes for the community. And again, we may not all agree on how to reach those values. I think some of them, most of us can agree on, but that's what we are hoping to get constructive feedback on in this process of how the regulations do or don't reflect those. So briefly, I'll go through these maps. These are split up and you can view these, and again, they're zoomable. They're split up through the 3 different types of plexes. So duplexes and where they're permitted to be allowed. Excuse me. So again, you can see here in green, they are proposed to be allowed in a lot of our city and in all of our primarily residential zoning districts. They would be permitted. Again, they would not be able to take up more space or look different or be taller than or have different parking than a single family home would in any of these places. I think one of the main concerns we've heard is the covenant issue, which I mentioned earlier. We will be doing more research on to be able to address that question when it comes to public hearing time. And as we've said before, and all of you know, we have duplexes in town. They're already here and they're great. And they're not causing problems in the single family neighborhoods, even those that are rented. They are part of the fabric of the community we already have, and we would just like to help people have the option of creating more. So triplexes here, you can just see briefly from looking at the map. Yes, they are proposed to be permitted in some places. Most places they are proposed to be conditional, which is the yellow. So again, 3 units under 1 roof, and that would have to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals. We are considering special conditional use standards for those to address some of the issues that we hear in this process. We are definitely open to that. And again, they're already here. So they are in your neighborhoods. They are in the historic neighborhoods and in other neighborhoods as well. And we, as an enforcement arm in our division, do not get more calls or excessive calls to buildings with multiple units than single family. And then same type of map for 4plex. So where it would be permitted and where it would be conditional. And you can zoom in and look at that. Here we go. Let's see if I can move it up. Excuse me. So 4 units under 1 roof, but no bigger than a single family home, and having to meet the bulk and design of those buildings that already exist on the block face. And again, they're here. So as we said last time that this went forward, and I've said a couple of times tonight, we have plexes in Bloomington. They offer a type of living that maybe not everyone would like, but some people definitely do. And we would like to increase the opportunity we would like to increase opportunity for people to be able to live in desirable neighborhoods. And one way to do that is to increase the number of units. And that helps to address our housing availability shortage as well. And as mentioned, we are under, we know that plexus aren't going to solve everything. And we think they're a good option to give people that may be available to some people who would like to live in maybe a smaller unit but stay in their neighborhood, but can't afford to stay in their large homes, or young families who can't afford to buy large homes but would like to be in neighborhoods that offer certain amenities and positives for them. So I think the last thing, I'll just recap a little bit, and then we'll go to the chat for questions. Just a second. So another thing we've heard recently is that this process is undemocratic. So I'll just repeat again that this is actually not a public hearing process at all. This is just you all and hopefully lots and lots of people in town communicating with staff about what types of areas they think are appropriate for the new zoning districts, what they think about the changes that we're planning for the plan unit developments or for the enhancement rezones, how they think those could be improved, what you all think of the text amendment, how you think it could be improved or changed to work in town. These are the things we're looking for. We have to propose something, and we have to base that on our professional experience and what we think is in line and best for the community. And then we did that using, logic and science-based recommendations, hours of research and discussion internally. We're doing the best we can to put the values of Bloomington into code and onto a map. And we are more than open to input about that that can help us to improve that. And that's what we're hoping to get from everybody here. I'll also say that because we are in COVID and everything is very strange, we will be looking for people to use the website to communicate with us. That's probably the easiest way. Again, because this isn't part of the public hearing process, we are just trying to get as many different viewpoints as possible. So having communication from you is great, and that's what we're looking for. We will be updating the surveys, as I said at the beginning, but for those who missed, the current general survey that's there now, about 100 people had taken it as of today, which is excellent. That will be coming down at the end of the week. Another survey related to this meeting and the mixed-use student housing meeting on Thursday will go up on Friday when the first survey comes down. And then we will also be holding office hours where a planner will be available via Zoom during daytime hours for those who can't meet these meetings to be able to answer direct questions or compile them. And if an answer can't be given right at the time, compiled to be added to the website questions that will be created after each of these meetings. So we are hoping for large and varied engagement. And that's going to be a little bit tough during COVID, but we are heartened by what we've seen already, having so many different people get on and do the survey. And again, for those who weren't here at the beginning, we've also reached out to all of your neighborhood association contacts and your council people, and made ourselves available for meetings where their members or constituents may have questions, and staff can be there to answer those, or again, for those that can't be answered live, compiled and taken back and answered at another time on the website. So we're hoping that those will be taken advantage of. We have had a few neighborhood associations already sign up to have a staff member at their meeting. And that way it may be easier for some people to communicate directly as opposed to in this type of